Knowing the difference between the bandeka and the vibora when you're learning the game can be the difference between you winning and losing matches.
Tom, we're here for another episode of the Padel School podcast in our studio. Today, huge topic, paddle overheads. What is the difference between a bandeka and a vibora?
There's a lot of terminology, isn't there, around the paddle overheads, a lot of Spanish origin in terms of the names. And so today, we're going to talk about the two main overheads in paddle, which is the bandeka and the vibora.
Yeah, and I think I found the terminology quite difficult initially, coming from tennis. And tennis, you've almost got your forehand, your backhand, your volley, and then it's like forehand volley, backhand volley, and smash, right? And I think when we came to paddle initially, it's like, okay, well, this is a bandeka, and you think, well, the origin of a bandeka is like a tray, like it's the tray that waiters carry, and originally it was described like this because that's how it used to be played. Like there's a lot of old school players that used to play their bandeka very much like with the open face like this, and that was often because the courts were concrete and the ground was concrete and it was such a fast surface that it was more important to like cut underneath the ball. Now technology has changed. Now you see the bandeka a bit more upright with the hand and players playing across the ball and using different spin on the ball, not just, completely underneath it. But it's stuck with it as the bandeka is really, we would describe it as a defensive overhead, wouldn't we? And often for us, it's almost a progression on from a high forehand volley, like a high defensive forehand volley would be a term probably.
Yeah, for a lot of players, they need to understand when they would use that shot, because yes, it's a defensive overhead, but as we've talked about in a lot of podcasts, defense for you might be different for me, and a lot of that is around capability and what level you're at. So what class as a defensive overhead for you might not be for me. So that's something that players need to think about. And also the big thing for me when players are learning the bandeka is around the speed at that shot, because it's a defensive overhead, but I think that the second half of that sentence, which a lot of the time players don't think about, is it's a shot that's used so you can recover the net. And once players start to understand that, they realise that the speed of this shot is really important, because if they hit the shot too quickly, they're not going to have time to recover the net, and in a way it defeats the object of using that shot in the first place. Yeah, and I think I almost try and describe the overheads in almost like a little bit of a spectrum, in terms of like when you're using the bandeka and you're full defense, like it's a very high lob and you don't feel confident enough to be really aggressive on it and you're pushed really far back, you need almost the most defense possible. And then we're going to talk more about the vibora shortly, but then almost you're going through your bandeka to being, okay, now I can neutralize, now I can maybe set up the point, set up the next shot, and then you get into your vibora, which is attacking, and then you've got almost your winning vibora at one end. And so when you start at the defensive end, it's like, right, I need to hit a shot to get back to net. And at a beginner level, it's the decision between, should I even hit this shot? Should I actually let the ball bounce and play after the glass for a bajada, because I don't have the capability to get back afterwards? And that is usually what we would advise. And then as you go up in level, like you probably the majority of the time would use a vibora action, and like a lot of the pros use a vibora action. But if you're playing outdoors and it's slightly windy and it's a high lob, you're probably going to use the bandeka. You're going to use it in order to say to yourself, right, my job here with this shot is to hold the net. Like that is the main aim with that shot, and you probably will play that as a left side player. You're either going to play that like soft down the middle, or you're going to try and find a bit more angle so that it goes off one glass or double glass to neutralize your opponents, right? Yeah, exactly. And it's probably the first overhead that beginner players or players new to paddle should learn. The bandeka, it's the foundation of the overheads. We talked about it being similar to the volley, and it's an extension of that, but it's definitely one of those overheads that as a new player to the game, you need to get the foundation in, and so to learn a solid bandeka will put you in good stead as you develop the other overheads. And I do hear some coaches saying, oh, well, the game is changing and the vibora is really the shot to play, and you don't need the bandeka anymore, so there's no point learning it. And I couldn't
disagree more with it. Like if you watch the pros, like particularly in conditions where it is slightly difficult or off a high lob, the women's game is majority bandejas. Like even in the men's game on the difficult lobs, you know, someone like LeBron, incredible player, is using the bandeja to create space to move players around. So I absolutely think you need to use it because it's a neutralizer. The vibora itself, and we can talk about the technique now, is almost you're coming with a more horizontal swing. So you're trying to hit a ball that is dropping with a horizontal swing, and there's much less margin for error on that shot, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't want to stray too far off topic, but so much of padel is tactical, and so much of padel, learning the different shots and the different techniques, is so you have that toolkit. So you have all of the shots to your disposal, and then you can apply them. Perhaps it's like you say, it's windy conditions or it's slow conditions, and you might use the bandeja a bit more, but maybe in quicker conditions you won't use the bandeja as much. And so much of padel is learning, just get the complete golf set. You've got all of the clubs you need in your bag, and so when you go out and play, you've got all of them that you can use. And so much of that is when I hear coaches say, oh, you don't need that shot anymore. Well, like we've always said, is actually if you learn all of these techniques, tactically it gives you so many more options.
Yeah, you can decide if you need it, right? And there you're talking about conditions, but also opponent, right? Like, I mean, depending on the type of opponent that you play, how comfortable they are defending with the glass, defending off the fence, what, you know, how quickly they come up, it changes how you play. And I think one of the interesting things about watching like Tapia Cuello against Chingalan is the way they use their soft overheads. Now, often they use it with a slight vibra technique, they brush around the ball, but often not with a bandeja. It's those soft overheads that I'm so impressed with, the way they are able to find the space on the ground so the second bounce dies on the back glass, or the second bounce is dying in the corner, and that is what for me is incredibly skillful, is how they can hit such a soft, accurate overhead, whether it is bandeja or vibra. They are able to do that because, like you said, they've got the full toolkit. And just moving slightly into the vibra, so we did a definition of the bandeja, and now the vibra is probably, if we were to use a definition there, and it's coming from, you know, the viper, the snake, is almost like the idea that it like whips and it bites. Really, we would describe it as an attacking slice smash, and we use slice, I think, thinking about a slice tennis serve. Like, that's how I think of it, is almost just slicing, you're coming round the ball rather than slice coming underneath. It's very much creating side spin on the ball, as opposed to coming underneath, which would be more a bandeja. Yeah,
and I think just to add to that, I'd say it is an attacking overhead, but it also can be used in defence. Like you were saying, at those top level, they're using that slice, they're using the slow vibra to just regain the net. And I think when you first learn the vibra, it is an attacking shot, and it's probably going to win you points. If you're a beginner or low intermediate level and you learn how to use the vibra, you're probably going to win the majority of your points just if you can play that and get it in the court, because your opponent is going to struggle to defend it, particularly if you keep it low off the ground. But I think as you go up the level, and okay, we're looking at, you know, Tapia and Cuello and those guys, that's different planet level. But even as you go from advanced upwards, it becomes more of a shot that I think is also used equally in defence as an attack.
Yeah, well, we recently had our vibra webinar, didn't we? So every month we do a challenge with our members on the platform, and it was vibra month, and so we do a webinar that we break down some of the pro shots, some of our members ask questions, and we actually use Paquito's vibra as an example, and talking about, we've done a video as part of a course with him where he's talking about his contact point for the vibra, and how he kind of brushes under and how he brushes to the side. And there were different questions that would come out, as, you know, where should we be aiming this? Should we be aiming this, you know, right down towards the fence? And what's the percentage we should be aiming in certain areas of the game? And I think that all applies to, you know, like the tactics of that specific match. Like, sometimes we'll play matches where, you know, you and I will play together, and I'll be playing with someone on the right who hangs back a little bit, and I will then use a vibra with more angle towards the fence, much more than against someone who hits the lob and really closes. And so I think that it's understanding the tactics and how you can put them into the game, so you have the tool set, but also understanding the implementation and how to put them in, right?
Yeah, and on a previous podcast, we talked about the lob, and a good mistake with the lob is if you hit the back glass. If you're working on the depth of your lob over time, if you can find your range, that is a good mistake, is hitting it too deep rather than hitting the lob too short. And I think when you're learning the vibra, a good mistake from my experience of coaching players is actually to miss the ball directly on that back glass. If you, as you're learning it, obviously we don't want to make a mistake, but as you're learning it, you are going to make mistakes. And if you can develop that vibra where the arm is going through and you're missing that ball just on that back glass, quite low off the back glass, you will start to develop this idea of keeping the ball low down the other end. I think a big pitfall that a lot of players get into, particularly from tennis, is they learn the vibra, but they're not keeping this horizontal swing path and they're actually coming down on the ball. And so they end up with a bouncy vibra that is actually quite easy to defend. So there are some techniques, aren't there, when you're learning the shot, some good mistakes that you could be making.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the important bit is practice, right?
Yeah.
Like actually practicing. And whether you get a ball machine and you feed that ball machine up and you put some targets down, and if you're not sure where to put the targets, we have a slinger course of drills for different shots, and one of those is the vibra, and you put the targets down, the ball machine feeds it up, and you're firing that vibra into the corner, because it is a confident shot and you need repetition in order to build up that confidence so that you feel confident enough to use it in a game. And it's almost like a domino effect, isn't it? You need that practice. You're never going to develop your vibra in a match. Like, you just don't get the lob in the right place often enough. So really it's like you develop the confidence and you practice not off court, you're still on court, but outside a match. And then you can, bring that into your game.
Yeah, and if you don't have a ball machine or a coach to give you those feeds, you can also do it with a partner, can't you? You can say to a partner, look, let's go down, let's practice our vibra. And if you have some drills that you can use for that vibra, and not just training the technique, but you can put them into point play. That's exactly why we created our drill book, which I think a note is in the show notes, a link in the show notes. You can go and practice this outside of the realms of a competitive match, and it's important to do that, because that's, like you said, it's where the confidence is built. If you don't do that, it's really difficult to develop it just through playing matches.
Yeah, and if you are working on the technique, it's send a video into our community. We are rapid at getting back, aren't we, usually, with tips of what they can work on. Then when you know what to work on, then you can go to the practice court, you can focus on that, and you can, immediately start improving that part of your game.